Great to be with you, Doug.
So we were going to talk just generally about the president's first year, but then he did that presser yesterday, so I got to start there. I'm assuming you loved it. You feel totally invigorated. You feel like he's on the case, and we're all good to go, right?
Well, it should concern every American. He is unfit for office, and what I was most concerned about was, in addition to just the overall terrible press conference and how unprepared he was for that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The fact that he essentially gave Russia the green light to have a minor incursion into Ukraine, that is unbelievable, and every American should oppose that. And our feedback from our allies, our feedback, according to recording from State Department officials, was just shock about how that essentially is giving Putin the green light. But Joe Biden, that press conference just shows, again, how not only ill-prepared he is to serve as president, but how out of touch he is what everyday Americans are going through. Inflation, the fact that we continue to have a supply chain crisis. We continue to have skyrocketing crime, not only in New York State, but across the country as a result of his failed agenda. And he wanted to blame Republicans, but what I think is really interesting, Doug, is this past week we saw that it was Democrats that opposed his far-left agenda. Democrats in the Senate who have torpedoed, his top priority in the Build Back Better agenda.
So he said yesterday, and with what preparation he did, they clearly thought, okay, say this a number of times, and somehow this will mean something. What are Republicans for? What are Republicans for? You tweeted out this morning that you were going to be on with me, and one of the first responses to your tweet, this guy says, well, will you tell us what Republicans are for? I know this is a softball, Elise Stefanik, but what are Republicans for?
I'm happy to tell you what Republicans are for. Republicans are for the United States Constitution. Republicans are for lower taxes. Republicans are for a balanced budget. Republicans are for a strong military and a strong national defense. Peace through strength, not the weakness we are seeing from Joe Biden and House Democrats. Republicans are for freedom. We are against unconstitutional mandates. We will continue to speak out against unconstitutional mandates. We are for the family. We are for education controlled at the local level. We are for parents' role in education, as opposed to what Democrats are for. So it is a very clear contrast, and the American people understand that. It's one of the reasons why Joe Biden's poll numbers have fallen so fast and so farther and faster than any first year of presidency in United States history.
Just on the voting issue and the bills, the two bills that have now stalled and failed, here's what Republicans in general are for, right? We're for voter ID, as is much of the country, obviously. We're not for felons voting. We're not for early voting that carries like months in advance. We're not for non-citizens voting like they're doing in New York City. The idea that Republicans don't stand for anything, we do, and everybody knows it too, and a lot of the American people do on that, and that's why it's so disingenuous when he says that stuff.
It is disingenuous, and the vast majority of the American people support our views on election integrity and election security. You talk about voter ID. That is something that the vast majority of Americans support. And even earlier last year, you saw Democrats kind of realize that they were attacking voter ID, but that's so out of touch with reality. In New York State, we are seeing the absolute overreach and unconstitutional allowance of illegals to vote in New York City municipal elections. Americans don't support that. Republicans don't support that, and we will continue to fight back on those issues. The other thing that's in the bill when they talk about the voting rights agenda is a federal takeover of our elections. It also includes taxpayer-funded campaigns. I can tell you that the hardworking families in the North Country, they don't want their hard-earned dollars to go for campaigns for AOC, Bernie Sanders, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden. As candidates, we work hard to earn support, but the last thing we need is taxpayer-funded campaigns and commercials. That would be to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars.
So today is the one-year anniversary of the Biden presidency, and I think if you told Democrats a year ago, like, hey, what's it going to be like in 2022, they would have said, this got done, that got done, and hey, we're making great progress, and we're undoing all these sort of things. As you look at the 1 year of Biden, I mean, obviously we know you don't like it, but even I am shocked at how ineffective and how many problems we have and how much he's not able to deal with some of this stuff.
You're spot on. Let's remember, a year ago, Joe Biden at his inauguration talked about bringing the country together, talked about bipartisanship. They had an opportunity to do that. Instead, they did the exact opposite. And the American people are the ones who are suffering. It's crisis after crisis. You know, if you look at the public health crisis, Joe Biden promised to shut down the virus when he was campaigning. But this past year, hospitalization rates skyrocketed. Testing shortages are massive across the country. There were more COVID-19 deaths in 2021 than there was in 2020. They still do not have a plan for how to ensure that testing is accessible in communities across America. You have inflation, and that hurts families. That hurts the people who work very hard to balance their budget. It hurts families in my district. Anybody who goes to the grocery store, it is shocking to see the price increases on bacon, on produce, on any food, on bread, on meat. And that is a tax on every American. And Democrats have not put forth any single strategy to tackle inflation. What I believe is we need to cut spending and balance the budget and stop this reckless $1 trillion agenda that they put forward. We have an energy crisis. You go to the gas pump in the North Country or anywhere across this country, gas prices haven't been this high since Joe Biden was vice president. Again, that hurts rural communities like I represent, who it's not rare to have an hour commute each way to work. And then the border crisis. This is really, really surreal. The amount of illegal immigrant apprehensions is 1.7 million last year alone, and that's higher than it has been in a generation. Yet there's no focus on border security. And I know, oftentimes the media will want to say, oh, that's just a border state issue. It is not just a border state issue. That impacts my district. I represent Border Patrol officers who have been transferred from the northern border down to the southern border over and over and over again. It's hard on their families. It's hard on the public health aspect because they've gotten COVID. And then here we are, as President of the United States, national security, you're responsible as commander-in-chief. And we've had multiple crises, and we're on the precipice, unfortunately, of another crisis. And rather than a strong American voice, again, yesterday, President Biden essentially gave the green light for a minor incursion from Russia into Ukraine. That is unacceptable.
It was disappointing that he wasn't asked about it, considering the thing went for 2 hours. But it would have been nice if somebody had said, listen, you said after this terrorist attack down in Texas that how did that guy get a gun? Everyone else in the country said, how did that guy get in the country? Can you explain the failings of your administration to protect us from this guy? And to me, that incident sort of represents the disconnect we have right here. He went to the fallback, playbook say it's about guns, when everybody else is saying, that guy was on watch list. They were watching him in England. How did we let him get in here?
Absolutely. I think you raise a really important point, but it's just a result of the open border policies, and it's just been a disaster from the very beginning of the Biden administration. And I will tell you, it has been shocking how much it has unraveled, how quickly. It shows that policies have an impact directly on people's lives, and people are seeing on an everyday basis the impact of these failed far-left policies.
So he said yesterday that Kamala, are you glad that she's been in charge of voting rights, and is she going to be a running mate? He said yes and yes. The politician in you, Elise Stefanik, must have said, great, I want her on the ticket in 2024, because let's evaluate her for a second in her first year.
Well, yes, that's a gift. That's a gift to Republicans. The more Kamala Harris is out and about across the country, the more she does interviews, that is a gift to Republicans in terms of our efforts to win back the House, because as America gets to know Vice President Kamala Harris, they realize that she's not up to the job and that she's failed in everything she's responsible for, whether it's the absolute disaster. They assigned her the southern border crisis. That's been a disaster. It's only gotten worse. They assigned her this voting rights bill. That has also been a disaster. And any basic interview she does, it is an embarrassment. And I'm a woman in elected office. I take tough criticism. But when it's on policies, it's fair game to criticize when it's been absolute failures when it comes to your policies and your leadership in tackling those policy challenges.
On your side, one thing that's always been said about you, Elise Stefanik, is, man, you can fundraise like nobody. You guys were down in Mar-a-Lago recently. You had a massive fundraiser. I was shocked at the money that was raised there. And while you were there, I believe Mr. Trump did say something about Stefanik 2028.
Yeah, that was a nice comment he made. I'm focused on doing my job. It's a huge responsibility to represent the North Country. I love my job. My mission is always to ensure that families in the North Country have a seat at the table at the highest level in Congress, and that I'm able to represent them, and also making sure that I'm delivering results consistently for my district, and I stand by that record, whether it's results in terms of funding, whether it's making sure the northern border issues are the top of the agenda, or whether it's supporting small businesses and families during the COVID crisis, or whether it's standing up for the Constitution. That was nice of President Trump to say, I have no plans, no announcements to make right now. I have a lot of responsibility, and I am a new mom, although that doesn't preclude people from running for higher office, but that's not in my plans right now.
Best guess, when we talk on January 20th, 2023, are we going to be saying, well, you know, it's still not great, but Biden's gotten better in his second year, or are we going, man, we got 2 more years of this?
I unfortunately think that, this next year is going to be a continuation of crisis. Economists, despite what the White House says that inflation was going to be transient, which is false, economists have said that inflation is likely to get worse. So I'm very concerned that another year of this agenda is going to be even more problematic and challenging for American families and families in the North Country. I think when we talk again in January 2023, Republicans will have earned the opportunity to win back the House, and I will be proud to have been a part of that effort. And we will focus on standing up for families. We will focus on making sure that we have a balanced budget, reining in this out-of-control spending, standing up for the Constitution against these unconstitutional mandates, making sure that our kids are in school across the board, no exceptions across the country. It is outrageous, and I think when we look back generations from now, the people who are most deserved from this leadership is going to be our kids and the challenges they've gone through with the out-of-school situation. Although not the case in most of the North Country. I credit my superintendents for being very focused on making sure the kids are in school, but that's not the case elsewhere in the state.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, always appreciate your time and the conversation. Look forward to doing it again.